If you want some big juicy biceps and a horseshoe at the back of your arm, then this video is for you. So your arms are made up of the biceps, which have two heads, the short head and the long head, the triceps, which have the long head, the medial head, and the lateral head, as well as the forearms, which have the forearm flexors, extenders, pronators, supinators, as well as the brachioradialis. And so with the biceps, you can emphasize each head depending on how you place your shoulders. And if you place your shoulders forward in front of you, like this here, then that will target the short head, which is the inner portion of the bicep right here. And it can be, and exercises which can target it would be exercises like preacher curls, some kind of concentration curl, as well as also spider curls, which are my favorite kind of bicep curls that involve placing your shoulders in front of you, and it's the one I do the most often. But now for the long head, it's the outer portion of the bicep right here, and it will be emphasized with your shoulders placed behind you like this. And exercises which can do that would be the seated incline curl, drag curls, as well as also Bayesian curls, which work the bicep in both that stretched position and with your shoulders behind you. What the hell just happened? Oh my god, my head's different. But it doesn't really matter as to what you actually do, as long as you're just basically flexing your elbow with a supinated wrist, then you're going to be targeting both the short and long head of the bicep just fine. But onto the triceps, which is made up of the long head, which is that largest part of the tricep and makes up the overall mass of the tricep, the lateral head, which is that kind of horseshoe on the tricep, and the smallest and least significant part of it, but still is necessary to train, the medial head of the tricep. And all three parts of the tricep can be emphasized differently depending on how you position your elbow. And with the long head, it's the only head that attaches onto the scapula, and so it would be best emphasized when you place your elbow up overhead of you. And exercises which can perform that would be with dumbbells, would be an overhead extension like these things, and the same can be also applied with the barbell, and you can also do an overhead extension on the cables, as well as also another exercise which could also do that would be skull crushers. However, all these exercises do put significant levels of stress on the elbow joint, and so if you do feel too much pain or discomfort, then what you could then opt for would be to do the overhead pushaways instead. But also with the long head of the tricep, it can also be emphasized when you place your elbow behind you, such as with kickbacks or on a cable. However, if you use kickbacks on dumbbells, I think it's a very bad exercise because of its poor strength resistance profile, where at the bottom part of the rep, it's very easy and the muscle is in its strongest position, but the weight is the lightest, but at the very top, the muscle is the weakest, but yet the weight is the heaviest. And the problem with exercises that are like that, it means you're not going to be able to go very heavy on them, and it will mean that you aren't going to be able to hypertrophize them as much as exercises like an overhead push away or skull crushers or any other exercise with your elbows out in front of you. Or if you are going to do kickbacks, do it on a cable which matches the strength resistance profile of the tricep properly. Now onto the lateral head, Well, the reality behind that head is it attaches onto the humerus just like the medial head, and so it would be best and so it wouldn't really emphasize much different. And the best exercises which would emphasize both would be the tricep push down, or another exercise that could also better off emphasize them would be some sort of bench press, but the push-ups. But the reality with the bench press is it's different with the triceps. You'd have to use a bit more of a narrow grip, ideally around about shoulder width, and you must keep the bar path more vertical and focus on pressing just straight up using your triceps, and doing it that way will not get your chest involved as much. And the same goes for push-ups, where it'd be ideal to do them in a diamond shape, although it can also put excess stress on your elbow. But if you do want to do and so if you are feeling too much pain in your elbow, a shoulder width a hand placement for the push-ups will be just fine. And there are also many other exercises, but overall the tricep performs elbow extension, and as long as the exercises that you are doing are extending your elbow, then you're going to activate the tricep no matter what you will do. All three heads of the tricep in particular will be targeted as long as you're extending your elbow. And so now onto the forearms, but the supinators and pronators, they do get tons of work throughout your normal lifts, including your back exercises, your chest exercises, and the bicep and tricep exercises, and so they aren't going to be necessary in order to isolate. However, with the extenders, the flexors, and the brachioradialis, it doesn't occur naturally, and so it is necessary to isolate them. And so with the extenders, what they perform is there are two parts of it. There is the part of the extender that flexes the wrist, extends the wrist, and another part of it that extends the fingers, and that one is much deeper into the forearm than the actual extender that extends the wrist, and so it's not really necessary to target that one, to target the one that extends the fingers. And so the exercises which would be best to do it would be some sort of wrist extension, with the dumbbells here, or with a barbell, but I'd most likely prefer using a dumbbell and either holding my wrist up against my knee like this, or up against a bench like this, and that way, so that I'm fully stretching out the extenders completely and fully contracting them up at the top with a full range of motion. And now onto the flexors, and there are two parts of the flexors, and that would be the flexors which flex the fingers, and the flexors which flex the wrist. And in order to target them, then it would be both necessary in order to actually do that. And so the exercises which will do that would be some sort of wrist curl, and it could be with a dumbbell like this, either up against a bench or up against your knees, or you could do the same on cables like this. But on the wrist curls, what you must do is you must fully let the weight go like all the way up to the ends of your fingers, and then you must curl it, squeeze your fingers in, and then curl the weight like this, and in order to get the full, both parts of the forearm flexors actually being hypertrophied. However, it can also be the muscle that is also involved in a lot of grip strength exercises, and if you ever do lack grip strength, a weak forearm flexes also may be. However, there though, the better way to actually train for grip strength would be, and you'd mainly have bad grip strength on exercises, like on all back exercises, as well as some leg exercises, including RDLs and deadlifts. And so, in order to improve grip strength naturally, then the best exercises that I can think of that will do them would be farmer's walks, plate pinches, and dead hangs. And you must really full on squeeze as hard as you can up until the very point of when you literally cannot grip the weight anymore. And now onto the brachioradialis, and that muscle of the forearm, it does not cross the wrist joint and it crosses the elbow joint, and so the best way in order to emphasize it, and so it performs and so it flexes the elbow in the same way the bicep does, and also a tiny muscle called the brachialis, which is a small tiny muscle that is on the side of between your bicep and your tricep, but on the outer part of your arm. But the brachioradialis, what it performs is it performs elbow flexion, but specifically with your hand in a neutral position over a pronated position, which will more emphasize the brachialis, and over a supinated position, which will emphasize more of the short and long heads of the bicep. And so the best exercises which would target the brachioradialis, this muscle right here of the forearm, would be hammer curls, like this, as well as also some neutral grip pull-ups, which will also do the job just as effectively, but you have to do it in a way where you're just making sure you're really curling it like it is a hammer curl, and not necessarily pulling your elbows down to your sides, because then you're just going to target the lats instead. And that's it for today's video, and if you've enjoyed, please make sure you either like this or watch later so that you can reiterate over what I just said, so you can get a better understanding over what I talked about in the video about the best exercises to target different parts of the arm, and subscribe for no more BS on the fitness space like this one here.